the National News Desk. Locally covered, nationally connected.
This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. We are tracking breaking news out of Philadelphia, where 2 women were shot during the Super Bowl championship parade. Hundreds of thousands of fans in the city at the time celebrating the Eagles' recent victory. It's unclear what led up to the shooting. Police saying the women were hit in the leg and showed up at a medical tent in the area for treatment. They're both in stable condition, according to CBS News. We don't know yet if the person who pulled the trigger is in custody. But the violence comes exactly 1 year after 1 person was killed and 21 injured in a shooting at a parade in Kansas City as their Super Bowl win was celebrated. We'll continue to track the very latest and bring you the developments both on air and online at thenationaldesk.com. Right now, 75 million Americans are under winter weather alerts and 20 million people are under flood alerts as a storm system tracks across the country. Moderate to heavy snow is forecast in the upper Midwest tonight and the Great Lakes and New England this weekend. Starting tomorrow night, a bigger storm could bring 10 inches of snow or more to parts of New York and New England. Parts of the Appalachians and the Mississippi, Tennessee and Ohio valleys are at risk for intense rainfall and life-threatening flash flooding tonight and tomorrow. Severe thunderstorms could bring 8 inches of rain to some areas, especially parts of Tennessee and Kentucky. Strong tornadoes are possible tomorrow in parts of Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. Vice President J.D. Vance is echoing President Donald Trump's message that the European countries need to do more to step up in defense and security of their continent. He's in Germany today addressing the Munich Security Conference. He also addressed yesterday's auto attack in the city, leaving at least 36 injured, asking when will countries learn the known risks we all face?
It's a terrible story, but it's one we've heard way too many times in Europe and unfortunately too many times in the United States as well. An asylum seeker, often a young man in his mid-20s, already known to police, rams a car into a crowd and shatters a community. How many times must we suffer these appalling setbacks before we change course and take our shared civilization in a new direction?
The vice president, along with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, then met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky about next steps to end the war between Ukraine and Russia. Zelensky said he needs security guarantees before talks can begin and that he will only agree to see Putin after a common plan with Trump is agreed to.
We had an hour-long conversation, a long conversation. Enough conversation to talk about some details, not enough to make a plan. Definitely not enough. We hear each other. We talked very positively. It was a really good conversation.
We learned late this afternoon that federal investigators believe miscommunication and possible faulty data may have been the cause of the deadly crash between an American Airlines passenger jet and an Army Black Hawk helicopter right near Reagan National Airport late last month. Officials with the National Transportation Safety Board say they found evidence that the pilots of each aircraft reported different altitudes of the helicopter. It's unclear why, and the air traffic control tower told the helicopter to, quote, pass behind the jet shortly before the crash, but that audio got cut off, and there's no evidence the pilots even heard or saw it coming.
The portion of the transmission that stated pass behind the may not have been received by the Black Hawk crew. Transmission was stepped on by a 0.8-second mic key from the Black Hawk.
The deadly midair collision near that airport killed all 67 people on board, the passenger jet and the helicopter. The Federal Aviation Administration has prohibited most non-emergency helicopters from flying in that area, and that change might become permanent. We are learning more today about the school shooting that never happened, as would-be shooter 18-year-old Trinity J. Shockley remains in jail held without bond. Shockley, who identifies as transgender and goes by the name Jamie, was arrested last night for allegedly planning a Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School-inspired Valentine's Day massacre today at a high school in Mooresville, Indiana. A tipster alerted police of the plan, saying it was in the works for a year. Inside the suspect's room, police reportedly found several photos of mass shooters, including of Nicholas Cruz, the man responsible for the Parkland school shooting that happened 7 years ago today. Andrew Lester, the 86-year-old man who was accused of shooting a teen who mistakenly arrived at his home 2 years ago, is changing his plea to guilty for second-degree assault charges. Lester was originally set to stand trial next week, but his attorneys say he is in deteriorating health, partially due to the stress surrounding the case. The victim, Ralph Yarl, says he was shot twice in 2023, once in the head, after going to the wrong address to pick up his siblings. Yarl is still recovering from a brain injury after that shooting.
Hey, please don't jump. Come here, please. Come here, I'm going to help you.
A Cincinnati police officer being praised for his efforts to save a woman about to commit suicide. This newly released video is from last November. Officer Newman came across this woman looking to jump from a building. He eventually got close enough to help her back to safety with the help of another officer. Arrests of illegal migrants in the first 3 weeks of President Trump's second term are ahead of his first term in the same time frame, but numbers suggest that it's behind the number of arrests at the end of President Biden's term in office, according to Axios. Border Czar Tom Homan says he's aiming for higher numbers.
I'm not satisfied. There's more criminal aliens that need to be arrested, hundreds of thousands. Sanctuary cities are putting roadblocks up. We got leaks. So we need to increase the arrests of illegal aliens, especially those with criminal convictions.
Part of the reason for the drop is border encounters are down. Homan notes that border crossings have fallen 92% since President Trump took office. And you can now download TikTok once again on your phone. Apple and Google have restored it on their app stores after the new Attorney General Pam Bondi told the companies her Department of Justice would not fine them for violating a national security law prohibiting them from hosting the app. National correspondent Atral Nashar has a closer look at the issue that's far from resolved.
TikTok is back on the app stores for now.
Good afternoon.
Complying with an executive order from the president, the new Attorney General Pam Bondi giving Apple and Google the green light to resume hosting TikTok on their app stores, ending a 27-day hiatus triggered by a bipartisan national security law passed during the Biden administration. Tech giants bringing TikTok back is not without risk, legal experts say, especially if the executive order is challenged in court. Fines for violating the law? $5,000 per user.
TikTok isn't just another social media platform. TikTok is a Chinese communist spy app.
The law required TikTok to be sold from its Chinese parent company ByteDance by January 19th or be banned in the U.S.
We are concerned about actions they're taking contrary to U.S. interests around the world, but also contrary to U.S. interests and U.S. safety here at home.
When President Trump was sworn in, he extended the deadline for 75 days.
I'm sure it can be extended, but let's see, I don't think you'll need to.
Even some Republicans disagree and didn't think TikTok should have been given a lifeline in the first place.
Let me be crystal clear. There will be no extensions, no concessions, and no compromises for TikTok.
The president has put Vice President J.D. Vance in charge of brokering a deal to move TikTok out of Chinese hands. But the biggest obstacle remains. Neither TikTok nor ByteDance want a sale to occur.
I hope to be able to make a deal. I think it would be good, and we'll have to probably get approval from China to do it.
To sell TikTok's algorithm, Chinese government approval is mandatory. The most viable offer to buy the app comes from billionaire Frank McCourt.
Well, I know what China is for sure clear about. They're not letting the algorithm go, right? They've said this is part of Chinese government property.
For its users, perhaps the only thing harder to imagine than a future without TikTok is TikTok without the algorithm that makes it run. In Washington, I'm Atra Elnashar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Atra, thank you. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention losing about 10% of its staff under a new order from the Department of Health and Human Services. According to the Associated Press, CDC leaders were told just this morning that they're going to lay off almost 1,300 probationary employees and provide 4 weeks of paid leave. Not clear at this point when employees would be notified individually. But yesterday, the Trump administration started instructing agencies to lay off probationary employees who have not gotten civil service protection. They've generally been employed for under a year. And today is the first full day on the job for newly confirmed HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who told Fox News this week he has a, quote, generic list of the kind of people he wants to remove from the department. Government workers, meantime, continue to protest President Trump's efforts to downsize the federal workforce. Today, they held a rally outside of the HHS headquarters in D.C., holding signs that read, "Federal workers defy DOGE," and "No one voted for Elon Musk." The Treasury Department's internal watchdog now auditing the security of the federal government's payment system, following concerns from Democrats about the access granted to members of Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. AP reports the audit probably won't be finished until August. Coming up, doctors are feeling constrained by the limited time they have with patients, the shortcuts they're taking to make up for it. Then what's driving a rise in Valentine's Day spending this year that's expected to set a record? And later, the growing national movement to better protect babies from toxic metals in foods. We'll be right back. Tonight, tracking plunging retail sales, slipping by 0.9%. Consumers sharply curtailed their spending in the month of January. Consumer spending makes up about 2/3 of economic activity in the U.S., so this could indicate some weakening in the economy. But spending, it is certainly trending in the other direction when it comes to Valentine's Day. According to the annual survey from the National Retail Federation, consumers are expected to spend a record $27.5 billion by the end of the day today, and that's higher than what consumers spent last year at nearly $26 billion. Perhaps baked into that increase is the fact that consumers are paying a whole lot more this year for chocolate, up to 35% more, in fact. But analysts say there's still a silver lining.
The price of producing chocolate has gone up more than the price that consumers have been paying for chocolate. So there's a little bit of a good news thing there for consumers, that it's not necessarily as bad as it could have been.
9 in 10 doctors wish they could do more to help patients stay well, but there's just not enough time to make it happen. The National News Desk's Janae Bowens has a closer look at what's becoming a bigger and bigger issue.
Doctors are burnt out.
Feeling like our value lies in our productivity. That distance, detachment, and disconnection is how we do our jobs.
It's an issue further highlighted by a new MDVIP Ipsos survey of 401 primary care physicians that shows a whopping 81% say they can't spend as much time with their patients as they'd like.
We know the healthcare system's broken, and doctors are doing their best. They're working 50, 60-hour work weeks. But they have over 2,000 patients, most of them in their practices, so they're just trying to get everybody in.
MDVIP's Dr. Andrea Clemens says this impacts patient care. 57% of doctors find themselves writing prescriptions or referring to specialists due to time constraints.
Healthcare has become very transactional as opposed to relational, which is why patients sometimes feel like a number. Patients need to, trust their physician, not use Dr. Google.
Experts tell me patients should bring a list, try to get the first appointment in the morning or the first one after lunch. Speak up. Don't be afraid to switch doctors and look for companies that limit the number of patients a doctor can see. I'm Janae Bowens reporting.
Janae, thank you. Transgender advocates are protesting today at the Stonewall National Monument in New York City because the LGBTQ+ acronym on its federal website was just changed to LGB. This after President Trump signed an executive order insisting there are only two genders. The Stonewall Inn was at the heart of gay rights protests back in 1969, and the monument was established in 2016. 3 Israeli hostages are set to be freed by Hamas tomorrow, including an Israeli American. The dual nationals include 46-year-old Israeli-Argentinian Yair Horn, 36-year-old Israeli-American Sagi Dekolchain, and also 29-year-old Israeli-Russian Alexander Trofanov. And they were all taken from the same kibbutz on October 7th in 2023. It's the 6th hostage release seen under the current ceasefire deal. In exchange, more than 360 Palestinians jailed by Israel will be released. Pope Francis is back in the hospital to be treated for a week-long bout of bronchitis. He is in fair condition and is receiving treatment. The 88-year-old pontiff is canceling his agenda through Monday. Francis has long battled respiratory issues and bouts of acute bronchitis after having a part of one of his lungs removed as a young man. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we begin in Washington, where some florists are concerned about incoming tariffs.
It's just 12 stems in a vase.
The Valentine's Day rush can be a hectic time for Robin Desimoni, but this year she's ready. What this florist is not prepared for is how tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and other countries that export cut flowers will affect her industry.
It's really the availability and the cost. It'll put my product out of reach.
Iris and Peony in Des Moines relies on imports from other countries to keep flowers in stock year-round. Desimoni says tariffs would likely boost prices for the wholesale vendors she works with, which would drive up her own costs as well.
For almost 10 years, Dr. Demir Utzin with Harwoods Health in Minneapolis has been studying how immigration and policy changes can affect mental health. In case studies, Dr. Utzin says he's seen children develop mental health and behavioral issues when they're anxious about their family's immigration status.
Behavioral issues that we see in kids could range from really more, like fidgeting, being unable to sit still, not being able to sleep, or appetite, all the way to behavioral outbursts like yelling, screaming, arguing, fighting.
Here in San Antonio, Clarity Child Guidance Center is the only nonprofit mental health treatment facility for children. Since the year started, staff members tell me they have identified immigration concerns as a stressor for some of the kids they work with.
The Laughlin School District is adding its criticism to that already voiced by Lincoln Heights residents about the handling of Friday's neo-Nazi demonstration.
My concern is that we had dangerous people on our school grounds and we didn't know about it until after the fact. And if that damages relationships, it's definitely not the intent. But the safety and security of our kids is more important than any relationship with the municipality.
Longworth says had he known they were there, the school would have gone into lockdown. The village of Lincoln Heights showed its support for an independent investigation and praised the board for calling the protesters terrorists.
Coming up, the state's now stepping up to protect infants from toxic metals in baby food as the federal government fails to act. Spotlight on America's investigations inspired a new state law to protect infants from toxic heavy metals in baby food. In its wake, a national movement is growing as federal lawmakers and regulators are failing to act. New states are stepping up. Lisa Fletcher reports.
Touch your fingers to the raindrops.
The story of little Rudy Callahan's life began with a terrifying chapter: acute lead poisoning from his favorite snack, pouches of cinnamon applesauce.
We're Frankenstein. You love Halloween.
Rudy, now 2.5, was one of hundreds of kids nationwide poisoned by the potent neurotoxin that went undetected and unpoliced.
And that's what's the most frustrating about having a lead-poisoned child. It's completely preventable.
Rudy's mom, Sarah, says he will likely never be free of the toxin or its potential effects.
It still makes you really emotional.
It does.
Why is that?
Because it's something that Rudy's going to have to live with for the rest of his life. And so I want other families to be able to avoid that hurt and that pain.
Triggered by our reporting, last year, Maryland became the second state in the U.S. after California to pass a law requiring manufacturers test baby food for heavy metals.
House Bill 97, Senate Bill 723, Rudy's Law.
And include a QR code on the label for consumers to see the results. Since that groundbreaking piece of legislation, dubbed Rudy's Law, at least 5 other states have taken up the cause, including here in Virginia.
It's absolutely personal for me.
Delegate Michelle Lopez Maldonado first became concerned about toxic heavy metals in baby food after her own son experienced health issues as an infant. 20 years later, she's leading the charge.
I haven't met anybody who doesn't care about this bill.
Maldonado says her bill could pass in the next few months, adding to the list of states that have moved swiftly when the federal government did not.
The most important, impactful things that have changed in this country over our history has never come from the top. It has always come from the bottom and the middle and crescendoed up to force the system to change. This is no different.
And it's already changing as QR codes are starting to appear on baby foods nationwide.
What's it going to be like for you to walk into the grocery store, pick up a jar of baby food with a QR code on it, and know that the law that made that happen is named after your son?
I will be very excited. It's definitely bittersweet because this should not have happened, but I will be so excited when I walk into a grocery store and I see a QR code, I probably, even though he doesn't eat baby food anymore, will be the first person to scan it. And we've come a long way.
Rudy's remaining chapters are yet to be written, but Sarah Callahan won't stop until there are more laws on the books.
I will testify before the remaining 47 states. I will do anything to get bills passed to try to get poison out of baby food.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Lisa Fletcher.
And we are continuing to follow action on this in Washington, D.C., where lawmakers have promised to reintroduce a federal Baby Food Safety Act during this session. And coming up, despite being stuck in the hospital, how these very adorable newborns are celebrating their very first Valentine's Day in style. You could call him the sports enthusiast in chief. A week after Donald Trump became the first president to attend an NFL Super Bowl, he's going to make an appearance at the racing event of the year, the Daytona 500, happening this Sunday at the Daytona International Speedway. It will be his second time going there as president. He attended back in 2020. And the starting lineup for this year has been set. It is a 500-mile race that requires 200 laps to complete. And by Sunday afternoon, we're going to find out who gets to take home the trophy and, of course, the bragging rights. And how about this for heartwarming? These are the tiniest humans amongst us, the newborn babies in the NICU at Nebraska Medicine Hospital. As you can see, their outfits did not disappoint on their first Valentine's Day, dressed up in adorable heart-shaped costumes. The March of Dimes NICU family support programs helped nurses come up with the cute clothing, which I'm sure is bringing lots of smiles to the staff there, those babies' parents, and the public, which is now getting to see these photos circulated on social media. And that does it for this edition of the National News Desk. We do invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage on America's top stories. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful weekend.